Many of you actually in this room have had big roles in our fundraising efforts, and I know there are more that I probably may not be specifically aware of, but I truly want to extend my gratitude to all of you, because we just can't do it without you guys. So back at the, are there people out there, or should we go ahead and get started? I think we can probably go ahead and start. So, are we okay, Tim? Okay, so we'll just proceed. So, so 2 years ago or so, at the last conference, so what I'm going to do is just kind of give you a little bit of an overview of the research fundraising and be very transparent. Some of this you've already heard in the, from Rich, but so a couple years ago I was in a very serious situation in terms of having enough money to keep my lab going, and so this is kind of what I put out there for you. The good news is that things have gotten better for now, but even in relatively better circumstances, if you read what I said a couple years ago, if nothing more happens, then I'll be showing this same slide with equal relevance in about a year. So, you know, the challenge is to not just maintain the present, but obviously to continue future funding. So, you know, a lot of this is really obvious to you by now. Without research, I think it's fair to say we wouldn't have a conference like this, at least in this kind of a format. Even since the last conference, NIH funding with sequestration has even hit a lower all-time low. And compared to, say, 10 years ago, for people like me, a third of what was being funded 10 years ago by the National Institutes of Health is being funded now. So it is a horrendously difficult and exceptionally time-consuming endeavor to get grants to the NIH. And I've had some success over the years, but it's almost at this point a luxury for me to be able to dedicate that much time to, you know, something like 3 months of time to submit a grant where there's realistically about a 3 or 4% chance I'm going to get it. Those are the kinds of numbers I'm literally up against. Pediatrics research seems to be sort of a second-class citizen compared to research for adults, which is kind of mind-boggling when you think about where we should be investing our money. And within that subset, in research in rare disorders, oftentimes is a very hard sell. So that's why I've kind of moved to other more creative resources, and I've had some success from some private foundations, but even those are few and far between that are willing to support research like what we do with Jacobson syndrome. And I won't belabor this now. I'd have to talk to you over a beer or two to tell you that even at the NIH, the peer review process has some, I think, inherent flaws. So in my own situation, what we've been trying to do to keep my lab going is, and this does not pay for any of my salary, by the way, this is just to keep the bare bones of my lab going, namely the 2 full-time researchers in my lab and, of course, the reagents and stuff. So that's about $250,000 per year. And God willing, if I'm able to keep doing this for the next 20 or so years, you know, we're talking about a few $1 million over the next 20 years. So one of the things that I've sort of learned through my own private fundraising efforts, some of them have been with you guys, is a few observations. One, and again, I want people to feel free to chime in. I'm not a fundraiser, so I just do this for survival. But people that have resources or corporations actually have to make a certain amount of donation to charity, so don't forget that. And another thing for our cause, like we already talked about, which is I think actually quite impressive, is that there's only a 6% overhead. And one of my kind of competitors in a way is the American Heart Association, since they don't see any value in what I do. They might say that they do, but when push comes to shove, they haven't so far. Their overhead is 22%. Do you want me to, let's see. Oops, what did I just do now? All right, now I've got Rich, and I just lost my talk. Sorry. Oh, God. Let's see, what did I do now? Now what do I do? How do I get out of Rich? Sorry, Rich, nothing personal, but was that, I guess that was a mistake to do that. Okay, back to my phone. Thank you. You're hired. So, so anyway, American Heart has 3.5 times the overhead. that I have. And so I think that's a really important selling point. And when I do talk to the people that have supported my research, that is a huge selling point to them, knowing that virtually every dollar that they donate is going to me and not to support big overhead, people driving fancy cars, making unnecessary trips. I'm not saying the American Heart Association does that. So you heard about the major fundraisers, besides the How I Met Your Mother fundraiser, which took place in November, which unfortunately, because the show is now over, and it is the last time that's going to happen. So again, that kind of reiterates my point. That's been great to keep my lab going for this coming year, but I'm already starting to feel stressed about what's going to happen after that. And then each spring we have a fundraiser here in San Diego, which on average has raised about $50,000 a year with some of the private community philanthropists here in town. So we raised about $50,000 last year. I've actually been somewhat successful in getting some interest from some private foundations that I've been able to identify. The Hertz Family Foundation, which is based out of the Los Angeles area, the Warren and Betty Zabel Foundation, they were the founders of a company called Cubic, and the Groom Family Foundation have all made some pretty significant contributions this past year. So I just wanted to share with you a little bit of what I've learned. So last year we about met that $250,000 challenge, which is great for now. So some of the lessons I've learned is the most powerful tool for fundraising is when there really is a personal connection. So all those foundations that I just told you about came about. The Hertz Foundation, the founder of that is about a 60-year-old gentleman who's an enormously successful commercial realtor who he himself has congenital heart disease. The Groom Family Foundation, which is based in Northern California, is a family that's originally from Australia who started their winemakers, and they have a son with a heart defect that's had 2 open heart surgeries, who's now about 15 years old. And what they embarked on was to actually have a line of wine that they've committed to donating any proceeds to congenital heart disease research. And then the other foundation, which is the offshoot of the Cubic company, the CFO happened to be my next door neighbor, who's a great person. So again, I'm in connections. That's just kind of the reality. So the challenges, of course, that many of you have experienced personally is, how do you make that ask to get people interested? Imposing on your friends is how it feels sometimes when you're asking someone, which to me, I always feel very awkward. And in many cases, it can be a huge amount of work. I don't think the Stanfields are here today, but they had 2 very successful fundraising efforts over the last several years in Indiana for our research, and I think it became a labor of love. It's hard. It's a lot of work. So these are just some ideas. I think I actually showed this slide last time. The San Diego Padres, actually a few years ago, had a charity golf event which raised $20,000 for my research. There are a lot of golfers that are looking for any excuse to play around, and so that's sometimes not a bad thing to do. One thing that I've found that you have to be proactive about this, but a lot of these charity events, they actually rotate who's going to be the beneficiary of that event. And if you can identify those kinds of events, again, it's not going to happen overnight, but if you know of something going on in your community, you might be able to, kind of get on their radar so that maybe the next time or 2 years later, when it's time to choose a new recipient. So you have to be proactive and you have to be persistent, but I think there's a lot of potential in those kinds of events, and one of the advantages about that is that it's already an event that has been done, and you don't have to start from scratch to organize something. So I think that there's a lot of potential with that. Corporate sponsors have been a potential opportunity, and a lot of corporations, like some people here have been able to successfully do, is to get a matching program through your corporations that you work with. And another kind of important selling point is to at least try to persuade people, like the example of Alzheimer's disease, how the research from something as seemingly esoteric as Jacobson syndrome can apply to a much broader sector of the population. So, just continuing on, so looking at future fundraising strategies, grants, which I'm always or somewhat trying to do, but again, you have to balance your time investment to the practicality as far as how likely it is it's going to yield anything. The annual fundraising event that we've had in San Diego, I think, is good because it gives the cause an identity. In fact, the vast majority of what we raise is actually not from people that attend the event, but from people who learn about the event, and oftentimes they mail in checks and whatnot. It also improves sort of just the awareness. I can't emphasize enough, reaching out to foundations. You just have to be persistent, has been my experience, and hopefully have some connections. And there's always opportunity for new relationships. At our next fundraiser coming up, I actually, through the internet, found out about this young man by the name of Ethan Bortnick, who is just finishing a world tour and has graciously offered, he's a musician, to perform at our upcoming fundraising event. And I learned about him on the internet when I just put in a couple of keywords for a Google search. So I put in something like congenital heart disease foundation research, and I found out that here's this world-renowned kid who's been on, David Letterman and Oprah Winfrey, and he actually has a little brother with hypoplastic left heart syndrome. And if you go to his website, they say that through his concert tours around the world, he's helped to raise almost $30 million. Not only for congenital heart disease research, but for a lot of causes. And that's how it started, because I did a Google search, literally. So think about that. So, and all of you have creative ways of reaching out to your own little niches, I think. Obviously, the people in this group have done some really great grassroots fundraising efforts, which realistically hasn't generated a huge amount of money in the order of $250,000, with the exception, of course, of How I Met Your Mother. But the other thing that it does accomplish is to raise awareness. And when we started our fundraiser 6 years ago, a good friend of mine who had had a lot of experience in fundraising told me that a good way to approach this is to think about a fundraiser as being more like a friend raiser. And in talking to people like from our development office at UCSD, they say that it generally takes around 3 or 4 years from the initial event to begin to reap some major benefits, and that's about exactly the timing of how we've been able to get a little more substantial support. And before I forget, I really do want to pay special tribute to Craig and Rebecca Thomas. They're in Paris right now. I'm not sure if they're viewing this, but just those two events alone have raised almost $300,000, and I think single-handedly without them, I probably wouldn't have my lab right now. We love you guys. And like I said, the internet is an unbelievable resource. I mean, it allows us to connect, to find these people in ways that never would have been possible before. So, and I think I'll just leave you with the same slide that I did last time, and just to remind us, me as much as anybody, where would we be right now if it weren't for the research? So I think if you want to ask a question, but then I wanted to turn it over to, who's next? Beth, yeah, okay. Go ahead, you can ask a question while Beth is coming up here.
I just wanted to say, last conference, I had put out a suggestion about, with the 200 families, to get to meet the goal of your lab expenses, to break it down in, to about, it came out to about $1,500 a year.
Mm-hmm. Per person, per family. Yeah.
And, so I tested that over this year. And so, to break it down into perspective, it was, 365 days a year came down to about $4.10 a day. $123.28 a month. So a cup of coffee. And so, I'm proud to say that I'm very happy that I gave up a cup of coffee for, Dr. Paul research. And, of course, now my question, I guess, is in knowing that she, could potentially lose the 4% or 6%, right? By putting it directly to you, do you get more money if you donate to 11Q and then it goes to you?
Like I said before, either way, it doesn't matter. So you can donate to 11Q, or you can go to my littleheartsbighopes.org website, which guides you right to the link to make that direct donation. And either way, it's only 6% overhead, which is, I think, about as good as any organization can. So.
I was just making sure there wasn't a way to do that. So, I'm happy to see how mine. I was going to give it to you today. When I heard what you said, I was like, oh, now which way do I give it to him?
we're just trying to make it as easy as possible, which probably ends up making it more complicated than ever.
Really quick, we're gonna move on to, and I forgot to do this in the business meeting part, but Beth and Amity have graciously taken over the role of fundraising co-chairs. So they are on the board of the 11Q organization and have taken over the role of fundraising co-chairs. And so I just want everyone to be aware that they're the ones who are in charge of that. But they need a committee. They need committee to help them, and they have both worked really hard on a lot of fundraisers that we've already had. And they actually took over a while ago, but I just wanted to present that at the conference, that they are the ones who are doing that now, and so they have a little bit to share with us.
And just if you can acknowledge Heather's previous work.
Oh, of course. Heather Wainwright was the previous, Heather Wainwright was our previous chairperson for our fundraising, and she did an incredible job, absolutely incredible, pulling things together, things that we had never thought of before. She had so many fantastic ideas, and she worked so hard. Unfortunately, due to some family situations, she has had to step down, but she has worked with both of these ladies and turned it over to them, and they're going to do a fabulous job also.
Do you know how to open it up okay? Is it on there?
It's on here, but it's not.
Here, I'll show you.
Sorry.
If you just find your talk and double click on it.
Okay. The actual, without opening it?
Yeah, that will open it. And then I'll show you how,
Oh, it's open on
let me
here.
see. Oh yeah, there. So then all you have to do is go to slideshow, or there's another way. That should do it. Yeah, okay.
All right, so I am Beth Bromant, and this is Amity Woodford, and as Lindsay said, we are going to be
Just speak real close to the mic, it's not great.
helping oversee the fundraising for Paul's research and also for the conference. And the first thing I think that we've actually already covered, and we just are going to go through this quickly because we're running a little bit behind schedule, is this morning, obviously, with hearing about how important the conference has been to everybody, I think it's pretty obvious why we want this to continue. And I think Jessica just did a great cheerleading job of making sure that everybody hopefully will continue to help more, not just be excited about it now, but for that to continue on. So, as we know, everybody, it seems, has learned something valuable and to be able to take something away from the conference. As I mentioned earlier, it literally has changed our daughter's life and our family's life as well. And Dr. Grosswell just mentioned that research funding has been hard to come by, and we also just talked about the conference costs. So, one of the things that I think that we need to think about is, as Dr. Paul mentioned, is about how uncomfortable it is asking people for money. And I agree with that. I'm absolutely 100% uncomfortable with it as well. However, I think we all, myself included, really kind of need to have a bit of a paradigm shift and to be able to think about what, we think of it as a necessary evil, but really what we're doing is we're inviting other people to share in the exciting work that Dr. Grossfeld is doing, which not only has potential to help with the kids with Jacobson syndrome, but also for Alzheimer's disease and other things as well. So it's not just, we're not asking for money for ourselves, we're asking for money to help do something that is life-changing for people. And in addition, we're giving people the opportunity to help children, which seems to be a very important thing that a lot of people want to do, as well as tax write-off is a good thing also for people to be able to get. So it doesn't have to be a really huge, complicated event. Golf outings are pretty complicated, but as Dr. Grossfeld mentioned, they're already, they've been running, and so it's possible to get involved with a golf outing or something that's already been going on. And every little bit really does help. So it's I know a lot of times initially I felt like, well, I see these $50,000 events that people are doing, and I can't do that. I don't know anybody that is a movie star or anything like that, but it all adds up. And so one of the things that you need to know about fundraising for 11Q is that it is a 501c3 organization, which means that it has a charitable tax-exempt status from the IRS. And because of that, we need to follow specific regulations and to be able to retain that status. It took several years for Lindsay to get that to be approved, and we want to make sure that it doesn't get lost by making any kind of mistakes. So legally we can, as they already mentioned, donate the money through from 11Q to Dr. Paul's research, and the donors are going to be receiving a tax receipt so that they can take that off of their taxes. So there are two different kinds of fundraisers. The first would be a fundraiser that doesn't require any kind of a 501c3 number. And so, for example, one of the things that Don Carzoli has been very successful with is a garage sale and lemonade stand that we kind of contributed to as well. And one of the things that's been fabulous for her is that she's got somebody who actually is going to be doing an in-kind donation. So all the money is going to be doubled, actually, because somebody's corporation is going to actually be matching that fund. And she's already gotten about $3,000 from the fundraiser, and so it's going to turn into $6,000. And it really is such that it's really easy to ask people for the junk. You know, you're asking people for stuff that they were going to get rid of anyway, so you're not asking them for money. So if you're uncomfortable with that, it definitely is time consuming. It was a 4-day garage sale through her community, you know, at the same time as the rest of her community. So there was a time investment there, but it's a relatively short time investment. It's intense, but it's not like over, you know, months and months and months. Another type of thing is Amity is going to be doing a painting party, like what Krista Walsworth did. Krista graciously has given Amity all of her information about you can address that better.
A painting party, a lot of cities have these shops, and you go, you pay a fee, and a portion of the proceeds go back to what organization you choose it to go to. So you have 30 people there, they each pay $35, and a certain portion of that goes to your whatever organization you choose. So it's a small amount, but if you have a lot of them, you can add up. So.
And in addition, it's like what Dr. Paul said about raising awareness as well, to be able to cultivate donors in the future. Also can have just something like a bake sale, and I'm going to encourage people to have honorariums or memorials through the 11Q website. So an honorarium would be something like remembering somebody's birthday or an anniversary, things like that. And then I'm going to skip crowdfunding for a second because we're going to be talking about that next. But the other type of fundraiser would be something that does need to use the 501c3 number, the tax number that we have, and in order to use that, Lindsay is asking that we use like an approval process, because just to make sure that we don't make any mistakes and use it incorrectly. So some examples of that type would be something like a silent auction, where you have to procure donations of items in advance, and then you would have to give the people your tax number for them to be able to write off that on their taxes. An event that I'm planning on doing either this fall or next spring is going to be a wine tasting with a silent auction. You could also do like any kind of event with a silent auction. You could do a bowling party, you could do a dinner dance, any sort of thing like that. You could also do a live auction. So any kind of fundraiser where the organizer needs to be reimbursed would require some sort of authorization to use that number. And then also, as we mentioned, with like what Dawn's got going on with the in-kind gifts, which would be the matching. So going back to the crowdfunding, Amity's going to be explaining that, and it's pretty cool.
Many of you all saw the Indiegogo campaign that we did this year. You shared and donated, and basically what that is it's crowdfunding. There are several different companies that do this. I used Indiegogo. There's also GoFundMe and Google One. If you do a lot of these online fundraisers, you do have to pay attention because they have fees associated with them. The crowdfunding is what the Indiegogo campaign was, and it's basically people who network and pull their money via the internet to support other people's organizations. People can find projects that they're passionate about and make them happen. There are no fees to create a campaign like this. Like I said, there are fees associated at the end of it. and there are no obligations or commitments. Indiegogo also offers a 25% discount on their fee if you are a registered nonprofit like we are. And this is, you can see, this was our Indiegogo campaign. You can see the amount that was raised through Indiegogo, but also the amount through Facebook and direct emails. So you can really see the power of social media and how sharing these things, you know, gathers all these donations from people. We can also provide, we have a lot of these decals. If anybody is interested in using these things for fundraisers or anything like that, you can contact me. I'll be glad to send you as many as you want. And it's a nice little perk or thank you for people to show your support.
Another online fundraiser is something that's called One Today, and it's by Google. And you have to be authorized, an authorized charity in order to be able to use this. And we are at this point an authorized charity. We receive Google ad grants at this point. So anybody who now is searching for Jacobson syndrome through Google, not through Bing, because Bing doesn't do this, unfortunately, but searching for Jacobson syndrome now will get to the 11Q site. They'll be directed to that rather than just having to look up 11Q deletion or something along the lines that has 11Q in it. So that is something that would have helped me earlier. So, but anyway, Google also has a new program that is called One Today, and it just allows people to just donate through their website, I mean through their phones, through mobile sites, to do $1, or you can do more than that if you want to. And just different people will then choose something that they're interested in based on whatever their interests are. And that's one of the keys really to fundraising, is that people only donate to things that they're interested in. And if you go to to Costco and you're not interested in Children's Miracle Network, you're not going to donate to it. But if you are, then you're going to be. So this is something that not only can help us to get some more recognition, but also hopefully, you know, every little bit adds up. So also, if anybody would be interested in actually putting that together, it's not, I've just found it recently, so it's not taken care of yet. So if anybody wants something, one little thing to do, that'd be something that would be great. So just in kind of to wrap it up, some of our short-term goals for fund development would be just continued fundraising by individuals or groups, as Lindsay mentioned, doing things together. Regionally might be something that'd be fantastic. Also, as I mentioned, the One Today by Google is not up and running yet. And then some of our longer-term goals are to develop some long-term donor relations. As Dr. Paul mentioned, it does take time for people to become comfortable with an organization and to start to really contribute larger amounts of money oftentimes. We'd like to create an email list of individuals who are interested in receiving the 11Q newsletter, so that we don't just like blast it out to people who are just like, what is this junk mail? We don't want to bother people. We'd also like to increase repeat donors, and again, using the options now on the 11Q website, so you can put, if you want it to be a recurring donation, it can be monthly, it can be annual, and then also honorariums, as I mentioned. And then we also would like to start to try and cultivate some major gifts, and that would be the things that are in the $10, $20, etc., $1,000 ranges. So like Paul was talking about the foundations, but there are also actually individuals who can make those types of gifts as well. The key is finding the people who are interested in working with something like this. So like Paul was talking about with the heart defects, people with heart defects, or maybe somebody who's got a family member with Alzheimer's disease or something like that. And then also we'd like to start also figuring out how to help do some people with estate planning, because people can donate either in their will after they passed, or they also can do things during their lifetime, like a living trust, or something where they can donate securities or different kinds of items like that, and we're just learning about that. We haven't gotten that far, so if anybody is in that area, maybe talk to Rich about that. That's something else that we would like to do. So just really quickly, current needs, as Lindsay mentioned, we do need to have some people that would be willing to write thank you notes. Again, if it could be a regional volunteer, and it doesn't have to be something that you're going to say, well, if I volunteer now, I'm going to be stuck with it the rest of my life. You can say, okay, I can try this for 6 months and see how it goes, and we'd be very, very appreciative of that. It's not an eternal commitment. Also, if you would like, we'd be happy to give you a template of what to say, the types of things to include in the letter, and just to be aware that the thank you notes should ideally go out within about a week of receiving gifts, just because of the fact that that's, to make sure that we're really prompt with our thank yous and let people know we really do appreciate their efforts. Okay. Any questions?
I want to thank both of you for doing this because I think it's really impressive just to see how this is really mature in terms of the structure and how it was. So
I have one thing. So, who shops on Amazon?
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that. Amazon Smiles.
So,
Yes.
if you type in Amazon, smile.amazon.com, everything you order, you can target 11Q when you're ordering. They give a portion of that to 11Q.
You have to designate 11Q as
Smile.amazon.com.
smile.amazon.com, and you designate your 11Q. Yes.
eBay, if you sell something on eBay, can go to 11Q.
eBay as
And
well.
part of the donation can go to.
Oh, I was not aware of that.
People we know or shop Amazon every
And
day.
it costs them nothing.
Right.
It's
Right.
actually the same price for the person, the same cart, everything you have in your Amazon cart. Just what you purchase, Amazon donates a portion of that to 11Q.
And just to add to that, you can share that on Facebook. I had somebody contact me or on your groups on Facebook, and they had just bought a $500 barbecue off of Amazon and actually contacted Amazon because they had missed the post by a couple hours to see if they could get that credit. And every so often, Amazon will send you an email that they'll up the percentage today if you make your purchase. So that means like switch from buying your diapers at Costco to buying them on Amazon, and just think about the difference that a couple dollars might make and what that means.
And that's delivered to your house. Also, one more thing around the 501c3. If you are doing a fundraiser and you're going to use the 501c3 status for your fundraiser, that unfortunately cannot be targeted to a specific individual. So if you're doing a family fundraiser and you're trying to say get funds to come to the conference,
Oh, right.
if you're using the 501c3 status to give other people charitable, to be able to write those off on their taxes, that money has to come to the group. And then the group then disseminates that out. So if you're doing a targeted fundraiser for a specific individual or family, you cannot use the 501c3.
Thank you for that
I
clarification.
think you need to tell everybody about that Amazon thing, because it's a really powerful tool when we use it to a lesser extent.
Oh, Germany 1-0, sorry.
Oh, no.
And
Over?
Just do a this is what you do thing, and you need to use that already. Just make it easy for everybody. So do a this is what you do email or Facebook or everything, and just blitz everybody with Facebook one as well as the eBay and anything else like that. Just tell people, get it out there. That's important.
And one small detail, my wife told me about, her uncle orders stuff on Amazon, seems like almost daily. So what she has done is asked him to actually make that Amazon page is go to his bookmark page.
Oh, that's
so it's
great.
not just Amazon.com. When he clicks on his Amazon link, it takes him straight to the Smile page first, and then everything that he's doing after that. It's a small
Right.
detail.
Yeah,
But
that's very
if,
important.
but if,
Yeah, as soon as I log in, that's what it goes directly
If
to.
we go out and we say, you have all these instructions on how to do it. If you sort of just start out with, go to this link, bookmark it and make it your go-to Amazon link, then it's taken care of. Then it's just automatic. And the other small detail, I think somebody else mentioned it, is to, because this is something that you can go to your friends and family with and not feel like you're, it's begrudging or burdening them, because it doesn't cost them anything. Make sure that they understand that. Whatever maybe we write up, it goes out as blast that says, this, all you have to do is shop. We're not donating. This is something through Amazon, and
We'll have to ask
along those lines, for me, I need about 10 reminders to just incorporate that into my routine. And so, if someone would be willing to take ownership, even just to do that, by various social media, to just flood it every so often, keep bugging, keep reminding, because you're right. You're not imposing on people to say, by doing this, they're going to take X percentage every time. It's
So
not
we should
an
add it in the
great idea.
newsletter too.
What, I'm sorry?
And
Add it in the newsletter?
I know on the Facebook pages, I know on Amy's blog that she started, there are ways then to link all these. If you post something on Facebook, it pops up on Twitter or vice versa. And so there's ways to link all these things so you're not having to remember a full email list or everybody's Twitter handle or anything like that. That we can set that up where it just dominoes across all the social outlets.
And I was just going to say, a lot of us have, mine's a social worker, but we've got, our children have state budgets. They order hundreds and thousands of dollars every year through Amazon. And that's how the children get all their special needs. Your therapists order their stuff through Amazon. They spend hundreds and thousands every year. So if we can just tell our doctors, our therapists, our caseworkers, and get them on board, that right there is a lot of money going to Amazon.
Yeah, little
Ryan
things
can
that
make a little
add up
handout
pretty
for
quickly.
us to hand to people.
What's that?
Make a little handout for us to hand to our therapists.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I know that my doctors and therapists and my social worker would use it if they seen it, because they want to help children.
All right, I think we should maybe,
Take a
was there
break?
one last question, and then we should move on to the next session? Did you have anything else you guys wanted to say? Okay.
Hello.
Thank you.
Okay, I work for the federal government. They have what is called combined federal campaign. Every year, they have an open season, I believe it's from October and November. If we get there, it's another way to raise money. They collect like bi-weekly, in each paycheck, the employee decide how much money they want to give, and they do that every year. And, they collect money. So if we can, I can get more information and find out how to enroll.
That would be a great thing to put into the
Even in
news.
the open season, probably in my area, I can present the organization to them to stimulate, some donation.